stand. Comic kicks with the upper hand.
Welcome to this Moving Panels One Shot. Let's have a nerdy little conversation. In fact, let's have a romantic, nerdy conversation.
Oh.
It is the 5th year of Bethany and I doing our Valentine's date night. And we always do a one-shot right before the full episode to decide what it is that we are going to watch.
Yes, and I had a really good idea, didn't I?
Yeah, why don't you tell everybody what your idea was?
So my idea was, what if we did a bracket to figure out what the best comic book couple was, and then our Valentine movie could be whatever the winner was, a movie that represents their story.
Featured that couple, yeah.
Featured that couple the best.
Yeah. So we did post it onto social media over the last few weeks, and we had people vote. We're going to do the bracket from the beginning just between the two of us, but since there's only two of us, in case of a tie, we're going to look to see how the votes played out online and see what may move forward. But I say let's just go ahead and jump into this, because the first round we're probably going to knock out a lot, because there's probably several here that Bethany is not familiar with.
Yes.
I took these off of various websites that did a similar thing, ranking couples from comic books, and it even did the movies, but I was like, okay, but they have to be a couple from the comic. And then based off of how they were ranked on all the different sites, I used Ranker. I want to say I used CBR for a couple of these, some other sites, but based off of how they ranked, I averaged those rankings together, and that's how the seeding came to be for this. So just to explain that. But let's go ahead and jump into round one. And first off, we have our number one seed, Superman and Lois, because they had to be, against Robot and Monster Girl from Invincible.
Now, who are those people?
So they're part of a team that's in the comic Invincible, which was turned into a cartoon. And Robot is exactly what he sounds like. He's a robot. Yes, okay. Although he does develop himself a human body.
Okay.
And then Monster Girl is a girl who can kind of Hulk out. She turns into a monster. The sad thing about her story, though, is every time she turns into the monster, when she turns back into the girl, she's younger.
Oh.
Yeah. So
I could see where that would complicate things as she got older.
So I would say we just go ahead and move on. Superman and Lois?
Well, I mean, we don't want to show our hands here, but yeah.
Well, you don't know. You can't.
I don't even know them.
So you can't compare the relationship of Robot and Monster Girl to Superman and Lois.
You're the one that told me to compare them.
Yes. All right. Next up, we have Daredevil and Elektra. So, of course, their relationship in the comic books go all the way back to when they were in college, before they were the superheroes and anti-hero, whatever you want to call Elektra. And then we've seen them live action with Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner.
Right.
We've also seen them on the Netflix, now Disney Plus show.
Yeah.
So we've had several different versions of Daredevil and Elektra. Then they are going up against another Marvel duo, Ben Grimm, The Thing, and Alicia Masters, his blind girlfriend and eventually wife.
Well, it's interesting that these couples were compared.
Yeah, there's two blind people in this pairing. Now, do you remember Alicia Masters has been live action?
Okay.
Which is why I included the couple. So in the Fantastic Four that had Chris Evans and Jessica Alba. So Alicia was played by Kerry Washington.
Okay, cool. Ooh, yeah. Interesting.
Do you not remember that?
I think this is when I
reveal you've never seen that Fantastic Four.
I've never really watched them, no.
All right. Well, I know you've seen Daredevil, Ben Affleck Daredevil movie.
I have seen Daredevil.
Yeah, yes. You haven't seen the series.
I have not watched
but you've seen the Ben Affleck one.
Yes.
All right. So just based off of that, we default Daredevil and Elektra moving forward?
No, not necessarily, just because, I mean, I personally, just based on what I have seen, which is the Daredevil movie.
Okay.
I would much rather see something else, which is The Thing and Alicia, I guess.
Okay.
Just because, not because because you and I have kind of similar feelings about the Daredevil movie, in that it's not as bad as
people give it credit for. Yeah.
But I I don't feel like their relationship in that movie is as interesting. Does that make sense?
It does.
Like, that's not, yeah. So I think I would much rather watch The Thing and Alicia Masters.
So I 100% understand your argument. I do agree with your argument. Though, however, I'm the Daredevil fan.
Okay.
I am gonna go. I'm going to go Daredevil and Elektra. So that splits our vote. So we go to where it was voted on our social media.
Uh-huh.
And Daredevil and Elektra was a clean sweep on that one.
Well.
All right, so Daredevil and Elektra moves forward.
I guess, okay. So knowing, yes, they win, but I see who they're going to go up against in the next round, and it's not like that's the movie we're going to watch anyway. So,
all right. I like to jump around a little bit. I've started to learn from the brackets that if I go in a particular order, people can kind of follow what's going to happen.
Right.
So we're going to jump around a little bit. Next up, we are going to put Cyclops and Jean Grey up against Clark Kent and Lana Lang. And yes, I am using Clark Kent because that is more of the relationship. He wasn't really Superman when he had a relationship with Lana Lang.
Okay.
Now, that relationship, just to let you know, isn't as big as it is on screen, especially from Smallville.
Right.
Because in the comic books, in fact, right around the time Smallville came out, Lana was actually married. Well, I think by that time they may have divorced, but she married Pete Ross, Clark's best friend.
Yeah.
So even though, yes, she was Clark's,
first love
in high school, when they got older, it actually ended up being Lana and Pete that had the relationship. So, and then of course, I know the relationship between Cyclops and Jean Grey,
right?
Especially when we've recently watched X-Men '97, but we've also seen it in the 2000 X-Men movies.
Yeah.
So,
well, okay. I don't know if you've thought about this side of it before I make this decision. Have you thought about what we would watch if either of the characters won?
I would say really anything that features those two characters, and we can kind of decide that off camera. No, we're not recording with a camera. Off microphone. But I think we're just picking the couple, and then we'll find something that features that couple. So if it is, Cyclops and Jean Grey, we might find an episode of either the original series or X-Men '97. If it's Clark and Lana, we'll definitely find an episode of Smallville.
Right, because the Superman movie that it features them is not as... Yeah, gosh, if that is the case, that's really hard. Because I like both of those couples.
Well, I may surprise you here. I'm going to go with Cyclops and Jean Grey.
Okay. That's actually where I was leaning. Okay. Because I would like to see the X-Men cartoon, their relationship. The movies are fine, but the movies more gear Jean Grey towards Wolverine.
Uh-huh.
And it's like she kind of just settles for Cyclops. Like, I know she chooses him, but that never feels like the couple you're rooting for. So I would like to get to watch some of the cartoon. All
right. So Cyclops and Jean Grey moves forward there. Next up, we are going to do Black Bolt and Medusa from the Inhumans, which I'm pretty sure you are not familiar with.
No, but I do know who Medusa is.
Well, you know who Black Bolt is. You actually know who the character Black Bolt is, because he's the one that is part of the Illuminati that goes up against Wanda, and he doesn't speak. And when he goes to speak, Wanda says, "With what mouth?"
Ooh.
And that's Black Bolt.
Okay.
So, and then this Medusa is not the Medusa from mythology. She's just called Medusa because she has hair and she can control her hair.
Okay.
So
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they are going up against Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, and Carol Ferris, of course, played by real life married couple.
They weren't married then.
They weren't married then, but Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively.
And that's really the only that we would be able to watch.
No, there's some animated stuff that I could probably find that we could use. I was going to
say,
but
if that was it, then I'm going to say Black Bolt and Medusa.
But do understand, Black Bolt and Medusa, the only thing we'd have to go off of is the Inhumans television show, which was horribly received.
You know what?
And
Neither
canceled.
are gonna win.
So, yeah.
I'm just gonna vote for Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively.
Sounds good. We'll go with Hal Jordan and Carol Ferris on that one. All right, next up, we are going to do Batman and Catwoman, which we got a couple of things we could, it's some animated and live action to kind of follow with that, against Thor and Jane Foster.
Some of these are really hard.
And they could only get
Like,
more
I
difficult
know they're
as we
gonna
go.
get harder, but like some of these are early seeds,
They
and
are.
this is hard. I really love the movies with Thor and Jane,
Okay.
but I also really love Batman and Catwoman. I just love the idea of like she kind of stands for things that he is against.
Oh,
and
because
yet
she's a criminal.
she's a criminal,
Yeah.
and he, fights for non-criminal things. But so, oh gosh, they're both really interesting. I feel like the conversation about Batman and Catwoman would be more interesting
Okay.
than Thor and Jane. What do you think?
I think they'd both be interesting conversations
Yeah.
in both ways, especially with what ends up ultimately happening between Thor and Jane.
Right.
So I think there's a possibility of a lot of great discussion there. Let's see. I think I may go along with you
Yeah.
for Batman and Catwoman.
Yeah.
Just because you are interested in, the conversation, and so I'd be interested to hear what that conversation turns into.
Okay.
So we will go with Batman and Catwoman.
All right.
All right, next up we have Spider-Man and Mary Jane
Mm-hmm.
against Harley Quinn and Joker.
I'm gonna have to say Spider-Man and Mary Jane, just because I don't like the idea of voting for an abusive relationship.
But you would get to watch Joker fully ado.
Look, we can still. I'm sure you're gonna trick me into watching that of it. I am so torn about that movie because I love Lady Gaga and musicals, but I did not love the Joker. And so I'm really having to fight with the things that I love versus the things that I don't. So I'm going to say Spider-Man and Mary Jane just because Harley Quinn and the Joker are not couple goals. Like,
Yeah, I think
if I'm thinking best couple,
Yes.
they would not be something I would
yes,
choose.
I agree with you, and we're going for a date night type thing, and so Spider-Man and Mary Jane probably the better choice there. So they are going to move forward. Next up, we have Elongated Man and Sue Dibney,
Mm-hmm.
where the only thing live action that we have, or really only thing period that I know of, that we have to watch are a few episodes of The Flash.
Okay.
And then they are going up against Deadpool and Vanessa.
But that story is so sweet. Deadpool and Vanessa is a very sweet story. So that's my vote.
Yeah, I'll go with that as well. There's not enough of Elongated Man and Sue Dibney. Although there's a great story in there that one day I'd be interested for you to find out about.
Oh boy.
So, all right. Next up, we have Gambit and Rogue going up against Nightwing and Starfire.
My vote is Gambit and Rogue.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Gambit and Rogue too. I've never really been a fan of the Nightwing Starfire relationship.
All I can really think of is
The Teen Titans Go.
Teen Titans Go, where
Yeah.
Batman just loves Starfire and she is completely oblivious to it.
You mean Robin?
Yes,
Yes.
Robin.
I was going to say Batman. That would be weird. All right, so Gambit and Rogue are going to move forward in that bout. All right, next up, we are going to do Hawkman and Hawkgirl, which we've got some animated episodes of Justice League that we can watch. We've got some Legends of Tomorrow live action that we can watch that would satisfy with their relationships. And they are going up against Bruce Banner and Betty Ross, which for them, we've got the Ang Lee Hulk movie, and we've got the Incredible Hulk movie. Because she's not been featured yet in the
Marvel.
Well,
the MCU.
again, Incredible Hulk was technically MCU, so she was there. And rumor is, because we are releasing this obviously before Valentine's Day, which means we're releasing it before the new Captain America comes out. Liv Tyler is supposed to return as Betty Ross
Interesting.
in the new because Harrison Ford is now playing her dad.
Yeah.
So she is supposed to return in this movie. So, but there's no Hulk. Well, there's no Bruce Banner Hulk
Right.
in that movie. So really, all we got are those 2 live action movies. I can probably find some animated stuff that we could use, but that's what you got there. So,
well, these are both of these couples I'm not just like crazy about, and I'm more interested in learning about Hawkman and Hawkgirl than I am in Bruce Banner and Betsy Ross. That's kind of my decision with that.
Sounds good. So let's submit that one. All right, next up, we are going to do The Flash and Iris.
Oh.
So Barry Allen and Iris West, which we've got several things we could use for that. And they are going up against Huey and Starlight from The Boys.
I've never watched The Boys.
You have not watched The Boys.
My vote's for Flash and Iris.
Yeah, based off of the way you're wanting to go, and with this being kind of more of a date night thing, I think that is the better option. Right there.
Just you saying The Boys, I'm just like, oh.
Yeah. All right, next up we have Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy.
Ooh, okay.
And of course, we have the current Max Television, the cartoon that really plays off of that.
Interesting.
And they are going up against, this is fun little collection of couples here. And they are going up against Archie and Betty and Veronica.
So that would be, if we're going to choose all 3, we would have to watch Riverdale, right?
Yes.
Because aren't they a throuple in Riverdale?
Well, honestly, I think Riverdale is the only thing we'd get unless we found like some of the old cartoons from like the 60s and 70s.
Didn't they make a movie? Like a live action movie in like the 80s or?
I think I do know what you're talking about, but I've never seen it. So I don't know.
Okay. Well, this is a tough one. Where are you leaning?
I'm leaning to Archie, Betty, and Veronica.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, okay. Yeah, I'll go with that.
Okay. You're probably not going to win, to be honest, but
no, but
we'll move them forward.
We never know. You never know.
Yeah.
Oh wait, never mind.
Yep. Bethany just saw who they're going to go up against, and so. All right. Next up, we have Reed Richards and Sue Storm, and of course, we can use just about any variation of the Fantastic Four, and they are going up against who I think Bethany's immediately going to pick, and that's Captain America and Peggy Carter.
I will say both of these couples are like iconic superhero couples, and so it's kind of tough to kick either one of them out so early in the game.
Yeah,
but I do love Cap and Peggy. Like, that's just the sweetest little story, and I love, and I love the 2 of them together. Thoughts?
No, I don't disagree with you. I don't think there's been enough of them in movies. And also in the comic, you're not going to like this, but in the comic, he's more known to have had a relationship with Sharon Carter.
Yeah.
Than he has with Peggy.
I mean, I remember you telling me that. Yeah, I love Captain America. Oh.
Oh, we are split.
Oh, no.
All the way. Well, so Bethany and I did agree. What happens if it's just a flat out
a tie,
and we said it would go to higher seating.
Oh.
And the higher seating is Reed Richards and Sue Storm.
All right, that's fair.
So Reed Richards and Sue Storm are moving on. All right, next up we have Ant-Man and the Wasp against Vision and Scarlet Witch.
Vision and Scarlet Witch. I mean, I just love that couple. I know that, technically in the MCU, both of them are dead, ? But I really hope they aren't, and they come back and they actually get to be together in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
So that's my vote.
No, I'm going to agree with you there. Ant-Man and the Wasp's a great relationship.
Oh yeah, they're cute, but it's not as interesting.
And I didn't specify which Ant-Man and the Wasp. Based off of the based off of the comics, it would actually be Hank and Janet.
I don't want that.
So, because
again, that's another abusive relationship, isn't it?
It turns into one.
Yeah.
Yes. So, all right. So they move forward, and next up we have Aquaman and Mera going up against Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor.
Okay. So I have not watched the Aquaman movie. I think I started it and I fell asleep. And I do love the Wonder Woman movie with Steve Trevor, but there's not much to talk about in terms of their relationship in that movie.
No, but you got Wonder Woman 84.
Again, not much to talk about with their relationship in that movie, and don't really want to watch it again.
Well, there's some animated stuff.
That was where my question was
And
going.
Steve Trevor did exist in the Linda Carter Wonder Woman as well.
Okay, so there would be more for that couple.
Aquaman and Mera, we'd pretty much have the 2 Aquaman movies,
Mhm.
and then everything else would be animated.
Okay. I'm not, if between the 2, I would pick Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor just because they're the ones I care more about.
Yeah, I'm with that. Let's go with Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor
Okay.
on that. All right, next up we have Luke Cage and Jessica Jones against Tony Stark and Pepper Potts. Which I will say, Tony Stark and Pepper Potts, you just talking about how much there was to go with stuff to watch. This is actually complete opposite. There's not a lot to go with in the comics. Right. Because I think I've told you this before. In the comics, Pepper Potts ends up marrying Happy Hogan.
Cute.
So there's not much in the relationship between Tony and Pepper. Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, they are an established couple in the comic books. They've had a kid together. And of course, in that case, about the only thing we would have is the first season of Jessica Jones. Because Jessica Jones never appears in the Luke Cage television series. Of course, they are together in Defenders, but there's not really much to their relationship. Really, the only thing that reflects on their relationship is the first season of Jessica Jones.
Okay. See, I am biased in this in that I do not like Gwyneth Paltrow.
Oh, okay.
And so
hot take.
Is it? But so that's why I'm more leaning towards Luke Cage and Jessica Jones. But I can be swayed.
I mean, I don't think I would have to sway you because I'm kind of would rather Luke Cage and Jessica Jones as well.
I just feel like there would be more to talk about in that situation.
Yeah, I do too. So let's just go ahead and go with that.
Yeah.
So Luke Cage and Jessica Jones. All right. And then I believe this is our final pairing. Yep, this is our final pairing. We have Green Arrow and Black Canary, which we've got animated stuff we could use. We've got the Arrow television show that we can use. They are going up against Spider-Man and Gwen Stacy. Or I guess you could say Peter Parker and Gwen Stacy if you wanted.
Yeah. Oh, man. Gosh.
I'm just going to go ahead and say Spider-Man and Gwen Stacy.
I kind of want to also say that. Just, it's such a tragic story. But it's so...
Spoiler.
Okay. My bad.
No, I don't disagree with you.
It's just more interesting to talk about.
Yeah. All right, so that closes out round 1. We're now moving into round 2. And first up, we are going to go ahead and put Spider-Man and Gwen Stacy up against The Flash and Iris West.
I feel like both of these are so good. Okay. So for Spider-Man and Gwen Stacy, we would be watching like one of the Amazing Spider-Man movies, right?
Yes, because yes. I mean, we could watch Spider-Man 3 because Bryce Dallas Howard does play Gwen Stacy
but
in
she's
that.
Not really like...
And they
they
don't
talk about
have a
flirting.
developed relationship. So yeah, you'd have the Amazing Spider-Man. That would probably be
That's going to be the truest.
Yes. And then Flash and Iris, I mean, you do have... I think our best bet is going to be to find an episode of the Flash television show.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
I'm going to go ahead and say Spider-Man and Gwen Stacy. I don't know what name I was about to say. Spider-Man and Gwen Stacy. I think because I was already about to say this, because I'll balance out your hot take. I don't like Iris in anything she's been in terms of a movie, TV show. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, then If you gave me not liking Gwyneth Paltrow, I'll give you not liking Iris West.
All right, so Spider-Man and Gwen Stacy move forward. Next up, we will put Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor against Deadpool and Vanessa.
Gosh, both of them such tragic love stories. So question, have you talked much on your podcast about Deadpool and Vanessa?
About them as a couple, not too much. Now, Chad and I did cover Deadpool a few years ago. I have nothing against repeating.
Yeah, I know that.
Repeating that. Yeah. And just like I've also, Nicholas and I covered Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
But again, same thing. But like I said, with Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor, we could find other things. Whereas with Deadpool and Vanessa, we really only have the first two Deadpool movies because their relationship's not really much to talk about in the third one.
No.
So.
My gut is leaning towards Deadpool and Vanessa, but I could be swayed.
No, I don't want to sway you. Unless I have strong feelings, I'm not going to try to sway you.
Yeah.
So I'm good with Deadpool and Vanessa. So
okay.
let's move forward. Deadpool and Vanessa. All right. Next up, we are going to do Cyclops and Jean Grey against Archie and Betty and Veronica. I am sorry. Cyclops and Jean Grey is going to move forward on this.
Yeah, that's fair. Although I would one day, I think it would be fun for us to cover some Archie comics stuff.
Yes, and we can watch Riverdale, which we never really watched.
We watched most of the first season.
Yeah, and then we abandoned it.
And then we stopped it.
Yeah. All right, now next up, Spider-Man and Mary Jane against Hawkman and Hawkgirl. Now you showed interest in Hawkman and Hawkgirl, but
I am interested.
Does that interest beat out you wanting to do Mary Jane and Spider-Man?
So the problem I think I'm having is I keep going back and forth between saying like what's the most iconic couple and what is more interesting for us to cover in an episode. Because I think it would be more interesting to learn about Hawkman and Hawkgirl, but if we're talking about more iconic, it's Spider-Man and Mary Jane.
I won't disagree with you on that, so we can go with that.
So we're going with Spider-Man and Mary Jane.
Yes.
Yeah.
Next up, we are going to do Superman and Lois against Daredevil and Elektra. So yeah, my two like iconic characters here. The one that I started, Daredevil, who started off comic books with me, but then Superman, who
is surrounding us, watching us from every angle in this room.
Yes. I'm just, if you're worried, I'm just gonna go ahead and say I would pick Superman and Lois over Daredevil.
I would
and Elektra.
too.
Yeah.
But
so
that seems it feels like the obvious answer.
Yeah.
In this situation, I think a lot of people at home are gonna assume that Superman and Lois is gonna win, and you're probably gonna assume correctly.
Well, yeah, we'll have to see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next up we got Luke Cage and Jessica Jones against Hal Jordan and Carol Ferris.
I would say Luke Cage and Jessica Jones.
All right, I am for that. If it means I can avoid watching Green Lantern. All right, and now we've got Batman and Catwoman against Vision and Scarlet Witch.
This one's hard. I mean, I love Vision and Scarlet Witch. I really do.
Yeah. Well, you know what? You keep telling me to sway you. If your argument is who is the most iconic...
I know it's Batman and Catwoman. I know that.
Would it be, though? Because more recently, I would almost argue that it's Vision and Scarlet Witch.
Well, you twisted my arm, Laramy.
So, you want to go Vision and Scarlet Witch?
Yeah, I do.
All right, let's do that then.
I just know that, like, a certain dapper Southern gent is going to get mad at me.
All right, and then finally in this round, we've got Reed Richards and Sue Storm against Gambit and Rogue.
I love Gambit and Rogue.
Okay, I'm good with Gambit and Rogue. Could be a little bit more interesting. All right, that brings us in to round 3, where we are going to have Superman and Lois going up against Deadpool and Vanessa.
It's Superman and Lois.
Okay.
I mean,
I was curious to hear what your argument was going to be before I said anything.
I do find Deadpool and Vanessa interesting, but there's a reason why Superman and Lois are such an iconic couple. Yeah. And there's so much depth to their relationship, and there always has been.
Don't disagree. Don't disagree at all. All right. How about Scarlet Witch and Vision against Spider-Man and Mary Jane?
Hiding from this question. Let me hear your thoughts.
I just think there's more depth in the Vision and Scarlet Witch story. I do. Now in the comics, there's some very interesting stories between Spider-Man and Mary Jane. This might be so. Let me throw this out. Would you consider Zendaya's character Mary Jane? Because if you do, then there throws another interesting twist into this. Because she is MJ.
Right.
Although that doesn't stand for Mary Jane in these movies. But she clearly is supposed to be Mary Jane. Yeah.
I mean, I do consider her a Mary Jane in that comic book.
Well, not comic book.
I
but
meant
in
movies, that movie. But I will say, like, the love story between Vision and Scarlet Witch, specifically in WandaVision, and just I know it's so powerful.
I agree.
And it's a more mature relationship, where Spider-Man and Mary Jane is more of a child-teen romance.
Yeah. All right. Well, then Vision and Scarlet Witch moving forward in that matchup. Next up, we've got Luke Cage and Jessica Jones against Cyclops and Jean Grey.
Oh, my gut says Cyclops and Jean Grey. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say for, again, what we're wanting to do this for, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you talk about, are we, really looking at this in terms of the best one? Again, you've got comics, you got all the different stories in comics, you got all the different iterations in some of these characters that we've had throughout animated movies and TV shows and, film. So you can't, we really have to go with which couple do we think is the best to discuss for here on Valentine's Day.
Right.
That's really what we have to look at. All right, next up we have Gambit and Rogue against Spider-Man and Gwen Stacy.
My gut's still saying Gambit and Rogue.
Okay. I'm with you on that.
Sorry, Gwen.
All
right.
right.
The worst thing that's happened to you, but
our final four. So first we've got Superman and Lois against Gambit and Rogue.
Oh man. I mean,
this is a case where I really, no bias, I think Superman and Lois is a better story than Gambit and Rogue.
Yeah. I agree with you.
All right. So they're going into the final, and they will be facing one of these two.
Oh, man.
Either Cyclops and Jean Grey or Vision and Scarlet Witch. This one's tough. This is a tough one.
Golly.
And you've got a lot of good stories, a lot of good things. The animated stuff we can watch with Cyclops and Jean, although, like I said, there is the X-Men movies from the early 2000s, because they developed their relationship a little in the modern X-Men movies, but I don't think enough to discuss a relationship.
Right.
And then Vision and Scarlet Witch, we've seen that in the movies starting at Age of Ultron, and going all the way, of course, through WandaVision. So,
oh man. I'm really trying to see what my gut says, and my gut doesn't want to say. I'm leaning towards Cyclops and Jean Grey, just because I do feel like there might be more to pull from when it comes to picking something. And I think it's going to hurt less when I look at them against Superman and Lois also.
All right, sounds good. All right, so that's it. Cyclops and Jean Grey are going up against Superman and Lois for our finale.
Man, Laramy, what are you going to pick?
I don't know, because I do agree with you. There's some interesting things that can be gathered from Cyclops and Jean Grey. Some interesting stories we can watch, especially from the animated series. Right. I think so.
I feel like if Cyclops and Jean Grey did win, it would need to be from the animated series, whatever it is we watch.
Yeah, and they could be from the 90s animated series, and of course there is X-Men 97. Whereas Superman and Lois, there's so much we can pick from.
Right.
because we can go. I mean, we don't have to do Superman 78 since that's been covered and talked about on the show a couple of times already. But we've got the Superman and Lois television show that just ended.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Lois and Clark, the TV series. We've got Clark and Lois from Smallville.
Yeah.
Of course, there are some animated things that we can look into. So
there's the Man of Steel.
Yeah.
Story.
Yeah. So there's a lot that we can look into when it comes to Superman and Lois. So I will say Superman and Lois just because of
he's watching us from every angle of this room,
but also just because of what all's out there.
Right.
And I think we could find something that really could be good. But I don't disagree that we could also do something good with Cyclops and Jean. So
why don't we just do both? We'll just cover both. Does that sound good to you? No. You're going to make me pick.
Yes, we need to pick.
Okay.
For the sake of the show.
For the sake of the show. I do agree with you. I think this has been written on the wall since we started the bracket. But
in fact, there they are holding hands
on the wall.
On the wall. Right there in this room.
Yeah. Superman and Lois truly are just the most, like, when you think of iconic superhero couples.
Yes.
They are the first couple that come to mind.
Yes.
Just because they have basically been together since it all started.
Basically.
I guess we'll learn more about that next week, but it's a good pair.
I
think
disagree.
It'll be interesting to talk about them as a couple, like not even just like Superman as Superman and what that means, but like Superman and Lois, or Lois and Clark together, and how they've made their relationship work throughout the years. So
I am curious, just so as I start to think about what we could watch, would you rather watch something about them finding out like early in their relationship, about them beginning to fall in love with each other, or would you like something that maybe they already have an established relationship?
I kind of like the idea of an established relationship.
Okay.
Just kind of honestly, when we were originally talking about doing this, but like the episodes, like the specials where they would like maybe the episode where they get engaged or get married, or if it was a TV show, or the movie where, the central focus is the relationship between the two characters.
Yeah. Which you got to experience a lot of when we did All-Star Superman last year.
Right.
That's got a good relationship between Superman and Lois. So, all right. Well, there you have it. So I think this is the first time where people aren't going to know exactly what we're going to do next week, but they know it's going to have something to do with Superman and Lois. Because they have been deemed, here it shall be said, here on Moving Panels, that
in a completely unbiased.
Yes, that is true. That is true. But here on Moving Panels, we have decided that the best comic book to on-screen couple is the iconic Superman and Lois Lane. And so check out that next week to find out what we talk about. But we'll go ahead and wrap things up. And of course, this is a whole week before Valentine's. And so you will actually hear our episode, both of these episodes, before Valentine's hits. So that
you can prepare.
Yeah. So it's a great way to get ready, and maybe you could maybe talking through these gave you an idea of something you could do together as a couple if you are both fans of comic book movies. So, all right. Well, thank you, Bethany, for joining me, and I can't wait to have our date night watching something related to Superman and Lois.
Yay.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. Rate and review the show. We'll wrap things up for today. For Moving Panels, I'm Laramy Wells, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
Moving panels, tales collide. Skips and scenes, where worlds divide. From print to screen, the legends stay.